Thanks so much for joining us, Professor. What are microplastics? Because we've all seen the plastic ocean in the Pacific, with all the kind of bits of junk. Well, what is a microplastic? How small does it have to be?
Yeah, microplastics are generally defined as just tiny pieces of plastic that are below 1 millimeter. So they are in a micro scale.
Where do these microplastics come from? Are they just big plastic that's broken down, or are they from somewhere else?
Yeah, these microplastics, some of them come from little pieces that are going to disintegrate from the bigger pieces of plastic, but most of them, they come from clothes. So when we wash our clothes in the washing machine, they are not properly cleaned out later on in the cleaning plants, and they are going to end up in the oceans at the end.
But my clothes don't have plastic. They're made of cotton, and where's plastic?
Well, yeah, if we do use cotton and natural tissues, it's no problem at all. Of course, they are just organic material, but there are many clothes that have nylon and other type of plastic, especially the elastic clothes, or also the sport clothes. Most of them are made of plastic.
Well, no one would think that you're washing these things. So the plastic ends up where? You've done a study looking at one particular part of the sea, I think near the coast of Corsica, haven't you? But where does this plastic end up, and what does it do?
So the study area that we were analyzing is in the Northern Tyrrhenian Sea between Corsica and the mainland of Italy. And these plastics that we found over there, they come from the continent that is around. So most of the plastic comes from the river. So when a river goes through an urban and industrialized area, there is a lot of plastic that is being collected and trapped in the waters, and at the end it's going to be transported down the river to the ocean. But we also have other sources, like in coastal areas, the activity that is around at the coast, so tourism, the towns and villages that are at the coast. In the Mediterranean Sea, there are very big cities at the coast, and there is a high population. So this is going to produce a lot of plastic, and if it is not properly treated and cleaned, it's going to end up in the water. And there are also many other sources at the coast, like harbors and industrial activity at the coast, but also fishing and maritime transport is going to produce a lot of plastic. For example, the nets of the fishing that end up in the water.
What do they do once they're in the ocean? Do they just sink to the bottom? And if they do, is that all right? Are they just in the sea bottom, or do they get eaten by animals? What happens to this stuff?
Well, there are many things that can happen in the process of going from the land down to the deep sea. So at the beginning, it was thought there was a big amount of plastic in the surface, floating in the surface. This is what we can see very easily. And so we have these huge patches of garbage, for example, in the gyres of the Pacific Ocean. But this is only 1% of the whole amount of plastic that is around. The rest is going to be somewhere in the water and going down to the deep sea. And the processes that are transporting these plastics are still not very well known. So it's known that there are some areas where the plastic is focused. So it's, for example, on the continental slopes, when we go down to the deep sea, there are submarine canyons. So it's like a valley where the transport of sediment and also plastic that with the sediment is going to be trapped. And in these places, very often we have like sediment avalanche. It's called a turbidity current. So it's like a snow avalanche, but with sediment. And we think that this process can also bring plastics down to the deep sea. And at the same time, we also have the oceanic circulation. So we don't only have ocean currents at the surface, but also near the seafloor and in the whole ocean. So all this energy, all these currents are going to take these plastics that are floating and take them somewhere else. And while they are sinking also, they are going to be transported somewhere else. And even when they are at the seafloor, it's not the end. These currents can be sometimes like a storm. And if there is a period of stronger currents, can take it again and then transport it again somewhere else.
So does it get eaten by the marine life as it's going down? Or does it get eaten even when it's sitting in the bottom? And what's the danger for the environment?
Well, the danger is that these plastics, once they are introduced into the organisms, because they are eating as part of the particles, there are many organisms that are filtering the water and all the particles that are in the water. And they cannot distinguish if this is an organic matter or if it is a piece of plastic. They just take everything. So this can alter the metabolism and the growth of these animals. Well, in our study, we didn't analyze the impact on the fauna. There are many studies focusing on that, especially at the coast, because it's a problem for fishing and also aquaculture and the development of the whole ecosystem. But the danger is also in the deep sea, the areas where we found that there are more accumulation of microplastics. There are very often zones with strong currents. So what we found actually is that in the areas of these strong currents, there is a higher accumulation of microplastics. And very often in these areas of strong currents, there is a very high biodiversity because the currents also bring nutrients. So now they are bringing nutrients and plastics, and the danger is, so how is this gonna affect on the deep sea ecosystems? And the deep sea ecosystems are very often much more vulnerable because of the conditions, very cold waters, slow growth. So all this, and especially we don't know exactly how it's working, how everything is working down there. The amount of data available is not that high. It's difficult to go down there and monitor the evolution. So we don't know how bad the impact could be. But at least what's important is to know where microplastics are going to be distributed so that we can better map the areas that could be mostly affected by this pollution.
You believe that this is as big a crisis as we're facing right now with coronavirus, don't you? Why do you say that?
Well, I think I say that because right now we are all aware of this problem that is having a very important impact on our lives and our future lives in the coming months and years. And we are all doing a very big effort to try to solve this problem together. But it looks like with the environmental problems, we don't realize how important it is. And we think it's a very long-term effect that we are not going to see it, so that our present day actions are not going to have a very strong impact on this problematic. But actually, we do have an impact right now. And it's even more important because this pollution is going to stay in the environment for a very long time. And the problem of plastics is that they last for a very long time, so the degradation is very slow. And if we keep producing at this rhythm, they just will keep accumulating in the oceans. And the amount of plastic is just gonna keep growing.
It sounds very depressing because obviously this has been going on for, is there anything we can do now? I mean, we can't get the plastic that's there already. That's there, isn't it? It's in the sea. We can't do anything about that. So what do you want? What do scientists like you want us to do as a society, as industry? What can we do?
Yeah, it's impossible to remove all the microplastics, especially from the sea, because they are so tiny. It's all mixed with mud and sand that is impossible to remove. So the most important thing that we can do is just try to reduce the amount of plastic that we are producing, try to use less plastic in general, and also maybe improve the methods of cleaning the water, and even trying to use more organic tissues and also many synthetic tissues in our clothes. So I think we have to think about that, be conscious about the problem, and try personally to reduce them. But then it's also, of course, very important to do some politics and some actions in common for the society, so that the amount of plastic that we are producing is being reduced, and especially the plastic we are using doesn't end up in the ocean or in the rivers, in the nature, that we properly clean it.
And finally, how big a risk is all this plastic? Because people would say eventually over thousands of years it'll just get absorbed and the planet will cope. How big is a risk are what we're doing to the atmosphere, to the planet, to the biosphere of the sea? What are we doing that makes this so worrying for you?
Yeah, in my opinion, what is very worrying is that this pollution that we are creating right now on land, at the coast, is gonna take a long time also to go down to the deep sea. So we have already observed some of plastics, or young plastics, let's say, that are already in the deep sea, but the process of transporting sediment and other particles from the coast to the deep sea may take a long time. And in the deep sea, the accumulation of sediment is very slow. So we can have sometimes less than 10 centimeters in 1,000 years. And the sediment that we are producing, or the plastic that we are producing right now here, is gonna take a long time to go deep down. So the amount of plastic that we produce is gonna stay in contact with the surface and with the animals living at the surface for a very long time. So if the amount of plastic that is in the nature is not very high, probably it's gonna affect less the ecosystems. But if we keep producing it and the concentration keeps rising, there could be a threshold that could damage the ecosystems and have a very strong impact that is gonna be very difficult to recover afterwards.
Professor, thank you so much for your time. That's brilliant.